Hypothetically, if I could make a trade for the St. Louis Blues and there would be no repercussions, who would I trade and why? I'm going to tell you coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode of Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk about who I would trade. I know a little bit of a different kind of conversation, but something that was heavy on my mind. I will be grading Tyler Tucker, and we also signed some young guys today. So to an entry-level contract, so I'll be talking about that as well. Busy episode as always. Before I dive any deeper on today's episode, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. I hope everybody is having a great Tuesday. On yesterday's episode, I think I was just so annoyed with how the playoffs were going that I forgot to mention some of the announcements that I had for the podcast. And I did tease yesterday that I did have a couple of exciting announcements going forward for Locked on Blues. So I will be having tomorrow the final boss. He is a huge Blues fan, and he's been to a lot of games at Enterprise this season. And as we know, I talked a lot about what the atmosphere was like, especially during those last couple games before they got eliminated from the playoffs. So I wanted to get a perspective on that. So he will be on with us for a little bit on Wednesday. On Thursday, we have Sportsology, aka Russ Cohen, and he is a draft guru. He knows everything about all the prospects. He does stuff for Sirius XM, NHL, like all these cool things that he does. He's also one of the hosts of the Locked On Flyers podcast, and he just is so insightful. Like Russ will go and seriously scout these kids like throughout the season at their respective colleges and programs. And I will be, when I go down to the draft, obviously I'm going to see him when I'm down there. So just somebody that I think will bring some really good insight to all of us, because the draft I'm going to be attending for the Blues of Locked On Blues, of course. And I have a lot of guys that I'm interested in, but I said to Russ, and this was my question, tell me about some players that are not even crossing my mind right now. So that'll be a good conversation on Thursday. And then, of course, on Friday, we have Are We Feeling Blue? So a fun week, some guests, and yeah, I'm excited for that. So first off, who would I trade? So that is a question that I've been thinking about a lot. So when it comes to players that I would trade hypothetically, let's pretend that money doesn't exist, contracts don't exist, and who I would trade. I think when it comes to value, you could get a lot of value, and I like him, and I don't want to get rid of him, but I do think you can get a lot of value out of Colton Parayko with his skill set. I know his age a little bit older, and I understand that that might be a little bit discouraging for some, but I still feel like he'd be able to get you some good value. Another guy that could get you value, and I hate saying this because I don't want this to happen, but realistically, I'm thinking about value out of players, would be Jordan Binnington. I know, don't come at me. But seriously, when you think about a guy that's going to be able to get you so much more than you already probably think you're going to get out of him, you could get a first rounder, you could get a really good player. Like there's so much that you can get out of Binnington. Because a lot of teams around the NHL, believe it or not, do need a starting goalie. And I'm not saying to trade him. I'm just saying that like who I would trade to get the most value is how this question is. Now, I know the obviously go, Robert Thomas. No, I would not trade Robert Thomas. He is Locked on Blues. Another player that could get you some value. I mean, I guess of Jake Neighbors. But right now, those are my couple guys. So I'm curious, what do you think? Is there a player that comes to your mind? I mean, maybe a Brandon Saad, honestly, could get you some value. It just, we don't have a lot of players that scream value. Maybe Jordan Kyrou, maybe a Tory. No, I'm joking. But no, there's really not that many players that will get you the value that you're going to want and need going forward. And I think that's why having these kind of conversations, it keeps it realistic. Because if you were to trade a guy, and I know he's our captain and I love him, but if we were to trade a Gabriel Shen, what kind of value can you seriously get out of that? If you trade a Nicoletti, can you seriously get that much value out of him? Like, think about all the players that you might want to trade and think if they could get you that value. Tyler Tucker, could he give you value? I know I'll be talking about him coming up soon, but I mean, Nathan Walker, could he get you value? That's what I'm saying, is the players that give us our most value are few, actually, considering. I don't think the Blues are a bad team. I think they're just an older team. While we do have a lot of young players, we also do have a good amount of guys that are kind of later in their career, to say that nicely. And I just don't think value wise, the Blues are going to get much out of trades, which is why with free agency, I'm excited because then that means you can just sign these guys on. But in terms of making trades over the summer, I would be very surprised if Doug went that route. I think there is a reason why the Blues stood pat at the trade deadline. I even say Pavel Buchnevich because, again, he's fine, a good player. I just don't think he's going to be able to get that value. And I hate that because I love this team, obviously my team, and I want them to be successful. But it's really hard to like justify another team giving you so much in return for certain players. Now, maybe if this was like 5 years ago and it was Bushi, yeah, absolutely value, but it's not 5 years ago. And that's the problem with a lot of these players is the fact, making the exception of Bennington, because goalies have longevity. But I mean, being in your early 30s is a little bit older in the NHL career stage of NHL life, to say it nicely. So yes, I think that it's okay to have talks about trading certain players if you want to get rid of contracts or things like that. Because I mean, think about Kevin Hayes. That we made out a good deal because the Flyers are still paying, I think, like majority of it, like I think half of it. So that's money that basically we're not paying to get a center, right? But in terms of other trades, I just don't know if we would have any guys that would be as much value as we would want back if we got rid of them. And that's where packages can happen. So that could always be a route. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but like off the top of my head, you put Nathan Walker and then you put Pavel Buchnevich together, for instance. Okay, you could get some value because you're giving away two assets. You're giving away a solid fourth liner, giving away a solid first liner. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all about puzzling these pieces together. And I know money's a thing. So I know what I'm saying right now. Certain players can't be traded because I know they all have like their no trade call wave. What they basically, the whole team has lists of teams that they don't want to be traded to. So that's on Doug. No, waiving my no trade clause. I mean, they can say that honestly. NTCs are literally like a part of the contract that the Blues compose for them. So they can do what they want, but I think packages might be something that we might be seeing. I just don't necessarily think that if the Blues want to improve their roster, when it comes to getting the star talent, you're going to have to sign some of these free agents. Otherwise, trade players away to retain some draft picks, to retain some salary cap space. I don't know why I said salary. I know it's cap space. I did the full legal name, salary cap space. But it's one of those things where I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm curious, is there any player that comes to your mind when you think about a trade? Are you like, I could see this player giving the Blues a big return? Now, I said the exception of Robert Thomas and Jake Neighbors because I think that would honestly set the team back by a lot. You need those two players. Oh my goodness. Could you imagine if Robert Thomas was traded? Like, you can't get rid of Robert Thomas. He's like untouchable. Jake Neighbors, I would be upset, but I wouldn't be as upset if it was Robert Thomas, just because I've said this all throughout the season. But I feel like this team revolves around Robert Thomas. So you can't get rid of him. But again, whatever Doug does, I won't be surprised because that's literally Doug Armstrong. and nothing that he seems to do surprises me. So, okay, I'm going to talk to you about my friends over Monopoly Go. You should download it. You should download it. You should download it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Game off. We got to pause here and talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to compete, albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels like a new, exciting every day with the constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pinch and co machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multiplayers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on the Google Play or App Store. Game on. I like how I was low key losing my voice during that, which is like so weird because I didn't feel like I was losing my voice. And when I was reading that, I'm like, oh my gosh, goodbye, Haley's voice. But I am going to talk to you about Tyler Tucker. And this is one that I was ready to talk about because I was defending him quite a bit over the last couple of episodes. And I think it's just because of how much progress I have seen Tux make. I talked about the fact that I saw the guy that wore the A for the T-Birds really flourish and was called up so many times to the St. Louis Blues this season. So let's go talk about Tyler Tucker's season and games that he's played and so much more, okay? So this season, Tux played 26 games with us and 6 games with the T-Birds. Now, luckily, which is really funny, I was able to see Tucker play with the T-Birds, so that was quite nice. With the St. Louis Blues this season, and I know what you're going to say, Hale, don't do that to me, okay? Do not do that to me. Tyler Tucker had 1 goal and 1 assist and 2 points. He had a 1 for plus minus, but why am I saying this? Well, Tucker's job is to be a defender, right? And I know sometimes the numbers, they can kind of look a little bit spooky, to say the least. I understand statistically wasn't a good season. I get that. But one thing about Tyler Tucker, and I will stand by this like on God, seriously, is the amount, not the lack, the amount of effort that he puts in. I'm usually used to saying lack of effort when it comes to this team. There's nobody that puts in more effort than Tyler Tucker. And maybe you could say Robert Thomas, but that's a pretty nice comparison to have. Tyler Tucker is one of those players that I just feel has just improved so much as a defender. And yes, sometimes defenders don't always get points, and that's fine. But he's had some fights this season, which was really nice to see out of him because it's just showing his passion. I think when it comes to defense, you can put Tux in that last pair and know that you're going to have a pretty solid game. The only thing is, him and Scott Perunovich were rotating in and out quite a bit, which I didn't like because I just felt like it was a lack of consistency. And that was my problem with Bannister, was just the ever-changing lines and pairs throughout the season that just to me didn't really make any sense sometimes. But I do understand too that at the end of the day, you have to put the best available players in the lineup. I know Tux has been in the AHL, I believe, for the past 5 seasons. And I know that's been quite a lot. 24 years old. And I'm not saying that he's young, but I am saying that he is a player that at least just has been playing better hockey. Now, when you think about Tucker and you think about, his career and you think about, what he's done, I just want to let you know a little bit more about Tyler Tucker because it is a little bit interesting about him. So, right now, yes, he is under contract until next season, so 2024 to 2025 with the St. Louis Blues. He also has a twin, which I thought was pretty cool. I like the twins. So before coming with us, he was with the Comets, the Flint Firebirds, and the Colts. He had an A with them, the Barry Colts. And then he was at the San Antonio Rampage. And then he was at the Newmarket Hurricanes, and so on and so forth. So why do I say this about Tyler Tucker and why am I telling you a little bit more about him? Well, one thing about Tucker, even back with his former teams, he always had the A, which I think is a really important sign, which means leadership. And I think with the T-Birds, you saw that a lot out of him. You saw him 100%, really just flourishing. So when it came to his NHL career, he was actually selected by the Blues in the 7th round of the 2018 entry draft, and he was the 200th overall pick. It is outstanding when players get drafted in the 7th round, and the fact that he is playing NHL minutes just goes to show the amount of work that he's put in. It's really easy to look at players like that and think, hell, how can they even be successful? And I get it. Usually you don't see a lot of 7th rounders in, but I think with Tyler Tucker, it's really important to understand that they can be successful and they can truly be a big part of a team. Like when you think about a 7th rounder actually that was picked, and you're going to laugh when I say this name, but Joe Pavelski, he was a 7th rounder, and I think that's absolutely insane. I mean, now he's with the Dallas Stars. I know we've played him quite a bit. But when you look at how Pavelski's played, you don't really think, oh, this is a player that was drafted in the 7th round. I say this because I want you to know that Frederik Andersen, one of my favorite goalies in the league, again, 7th round draft pick. And when I'm reading you these names, while I know that there's not a lot, like a Matt Roy, like for me, that means something. Is like, oh, I know who they are, and that's like cool. I know for you, but Tyler Tucker is on this list, and he's actually 23 overall for this list of 7th round draft pick active game leaders. So while Tux, I believe he's only played, I want to say 52 games. It's still really, cool. I mean, Ivan Fedotov made his premiere this year in Philadelphia with 3 games. He's on the list. But that's what I'm saying. A lot of these 7th round draft picks really don't get a lot of playing time. So it's truly one of those things that's so remarkable. I mean, obviously Pavelski leads this one, right, with 1,300 plus. So there's no catching up to him. But most of these players really don't even get 100 games. So I just think that's a really cool fun fact about Tucker because that was one thing I always remembered about him, that he was drafted so late and yet he's playing NHL minutes. So shout out to Tyler Tucker. I think that's just really cool. And I obviously wanted to brag a little bit about that with all of you because I like random hockey facts. Hockey facts. I'm going to talk to you about my friends at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing. Go Cardinals. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on the app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So I think for you and I, we haven't had a lot of news come out lately. And I understand, the season's kind of, well, it is done. Okay, it's done. The season's done. But the Blues did some things today that had your girl a little bit excited. And that is because the Blues signed some players to an entry-level contract. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hale, do we really trust Doug Armstrong with contracts? And the answer is no. But at the same time, you really can't mess up like an entry level contract. You can't do like the no trade clause. You can't do any of that stuff. So that makes me feel better. But at the end of the day, I still get a little bit nervous when it comes to the Blues and that. So listen, I'm going to be very transparent with all of you. I love our players and I've listened to all the translations and I've done the best that I can do. And it's one of those things where you have to understand this is not easy to pronounce names all the time. So bear with me. But today, the Blues signed, and luckily the first names are always easy, Marcus Silvgaard, who is a forward and defenseman, Samuel Johansson, and he's a defenseman, to a 2-year entry level contract. So Silvgaard is a native of Sweden, and he had 51 games that he played for this season and the Swedish Hockey League, so the SHL. And he was leading the team with 41 points. The 24-year-old forward also collected 23 goals, which ranked second in the SHL overall. So that is promising age, a little concerning, but it is really good stuff, okay? So, Johansson, a native of Sweden as well, dressed in 43 regular season games, and he was leading the defense and ranking second on the team with 11 goals and 27 overall points. He's 23 years old, and it's truly remarkable. So, Johansson was originally drafted by the Blue Jackets in the 6th round, so 176 overall of the 2020 NHL entry draft. So, really cool news. Again, your girl tries her best because I spent hours like practicing and I do this and I'm like, my brain freezes, but eventually I will get it right. I think it's cool. I mean, that's promising stuff. I like the SHL. I watch a lot of like really random like hockey games sometimes. So like I'll watch like the OHL, the WHL, like all these just random teams. And yeah, so really cool things going on right now with the Blues. Hopefully some moves will be made. But I like this. Dougie A, you didn't fail this time. All right. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, like what I always say, let's go Blues.